am being assisted behind the scenes by Mallory Ray, Dr. Mallory Ray with Extension, and Katie Nooner with Extension, both prior week speakers for this webinar series. But I want to welcome you back if you've been here in previous weeks, and if this is your first week, then that's fantastic, and you're catching the last week of our 4-part series. Tonight, my slide does not reflect it, but the title is 5 Key Considerations for a producer to think about when they're either starting or scaling up an ag business. So the 5 key considerations that I'm going to talk about are things that, if you're embarking on or expanding your agricultural venture, these factors are something that you should take into consideration. Understanding your market is paramount. This includes identifying target customers, maybe what their purchase preferences are, reviewing honestly your financial capacity of either your ongoing business or your ability to scale up your current business or get into that business in the first place. Additionally, you need to look at your team skills. Maybe your team is just you. Maybe you have other team members. Look at your operational efficiencies and what kind of processes you have in place. And lastly, assess your risks, things that could be a challenge or a hurdle or quite a challenge for your business should they occur, so that you can be prepared for those. So to start with, before you start a business or scale your business, it's very, very important to have a long-term vision. So think of that as a goal. Do you have a very clear idea or goal for either starting or scaling it? And that means what's the big picture? What is your motivation? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to yourself, maybe? I'm being silly. So is it for full-time income? Would it be maybe because you have a inherent mission that you want to improve access to healthy foods? Do you have a current operation and you're looking to diversify your farm income? Or maybe you're chasing that idyllic farm lifestyle. So you need to ask these different questions, and then the goal here is to try to put this on paper. And it might look like this. So here are some examples. So for a startup goal, an example might be, I am going to launch my agricultural business within 6 months by securing a farm location, planting 2 acres of crops. I plan to generate $10,000 in revenue through direct-to-consumer sales by the end of my first growing season. So that is a startup goal. Example, and then the next one down would be a scale up goal. So this one says, I'm going to increase my revenue by 20% within 12 months, that first year, and I'm going to do that by expanding my direct-to-consumer sales, and I'm also going to do that by launching an online store that will reach new customers. New customers meaning not current customers. So that would be a scale-up goal. And then you need to validate it. Is your goal realistic and is it reasonable? In other words, is the timeline reasonable? Can you grow this into a long-term plan, maybe push it out to a 5-year plan? And are you able to adapt it? So, if something should arise, that you can kind of make lean decision making and adapt this goal. So here's an example. My friend's farm, Brenda's Berries. She has listed 3 goals after I have had this type of conversation. And if everyone would look at those first 3, based on what we just talked about, do those first 3 goals that Brenda proposed, do those sound like they're good ones? The first one she came up with was, I want to become the best berry farm in the Kansas City region and increase nutrition offerings for families. Her second one was increase berry varieties based on customer requests. And the third one she thought would make a good goal was make Brenda's Berries a family destination where guests spend the afternoon. So if we looked at these 4 four criteria down below, specificity, is it, and then measurable, focus, and time bound, are Brenda's berries, those three goals up top, do those meet some of those criteria? Is there anything in there that's actually measurable or quantifiable, that make that a goal where she can determine later on whether she met it? So if you think about specificity, that would require the goal to clearly define what it needs to achieve. So the highlighted yellow scale up goal, this one, increasing net income by 25% from the sale of the berries and ice cream, that is specific. That's saying exactly what the goal, what's going to happen. Measurability, that one, in the highlighted goal, the goal includes a measurable target. So a 25% increase in net income. That would be very easy to track and say, yay, yes, I did it, or no, we didn't make it this year. Number 3, focus. So focus would be the goal focuses on a specific aspect of the business. And in this case, it's the sale of ice cream and berries. And it focuses all your effort on that particular aspect. So you're not kind of all over the place doing multiple things, and then you can't really tell which of those 4 or 5 things that you changed or put effort into actually resulted in the increase. And then time bound. Time bound is that the goal specifies a time frame. Hers says weekends in June and July is when she will do this extra effort, and it provides a clear timeline for that.
Just trying to pin down what is an appropriate startup goal. And I think the example you showed right here is aggressive in my mind, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh my
Agreed.
gosh, within 6 months, I'm going to secure a farm location. I'm going to plant 2 acres of crops and I'm going to generate $10,000 in revenue. I think that the point I wanted to make here, a couple points, were that um, this is an example goal. This goal would be attainable if someone had a significant amount of capital and labor. And I think a lot of people often have a startup goal in mind, and what they really are talking about is where they want their business to be in 3 to 5 years. And a lot of people want to enter into agriculture and start owning land. And I've been giving this advice out a lot recently about the importance of leasing land and doing other things to lower our capital requirements as we get started. And so one of the participants said, what about a startup goal of just breaking even? I don't know. Is that good enough? And it is really hard to work out the cost to break even because we do acquire cost at many points as we're starting businesses, right? Entering business, the all of the equipment purchases, and if we are purchasing land or tools, and then we've got the cost of growing and the cost of producing and the cost of marketing. And it the definition of sort of breaking even can you almost as a producer have to decide, what do I mean by this, right? Do I just want to cover my operating cost for that year? And then I want to start being able to make repayments on the larger capital investments that I have taken on. And it's why we try to factor in depreciation cost into our enterprise budgets to help somebody really look at, how do I break even on the cost of producing a product, but then when am I actually paying back all of my initial investments, and when am I truly seeing profit generation after all my costs? And so, one reason we did this series is to try to give you resources, try to give you a forum to think and talk to others about what are your goals with your business. And really, this idea is there's no one solution. In fact, there's a lot of ways to be really successful in this space. And it does take a lot of work, though.
Assessing your market. So understanding your target audience, again, it's crucial. Consider how that customer might prefer to purchase your product. Meaning, is it in bulk? Is it packaged? Is it cleaned? Is there added value? It's cut or prepared in any way, and then of course different kinds of price points might be important to your audience. Also, you need to assess if there's an increasing demand for your offerings, because this could significantly influence your business decisions. How do you assess that demand? Well, there's lots of different tools out there. Some actual tools. We've talked before during this series about Ag Intel, and I think I would suggest using that Market Intelligence tab. You might do your own grassroots research where you might survey, you might do a focus group, try to run something maybe through your social media page and get feedback from your existing customers. And another thing that I wanted to point out, and I think I'll have the link in the resources that get sent out, but if you either already are or might consider being a client with the Small Business Development Centers, they have a whole host of market research reports that are accessible to you once you have signed up and become a member. One that I remember when we were doing some business counseling using these was the Ring report. And I think you specify in that report that you want to know about your market demand within a certain geographical radius. So you could say 1 mile, 5 miles, maybe a little farther out, and it gives you all kinds of demographics and information about that. And then lastly, when you're assessing your market, look at allocating your resources. So this goes back to the marketing strategy type stuff that we talked about in week 1. That would have been Taylor Ann. And just saying here to propose to allocate about 7 to 15% of expected gross sales. Take that amount of money and budget that to spend on marketing. This is a slide talking about this is a couple of the reports from the Small Business Development Centers. This other one, Retail Opportunity Gap. It provides retail supply and demand figures as well as opportunity gap analysis for a specific geography area. So maybe if you are a produce grower and you're concerned about how many other folks are competitors in a certain specific zip code, this would be a report that could be interesting. And this is the Ring study analysis that I referenced. It shows competitors, consumer expenditures, demographics, psychographics, all kinds of great information, especially if you're a number person. So I thought that this quote was applicable when you think about assessing your market. This fellow, Robert, is from Shark Tank. I'm sure everybody kind of recognizes him. And he says, it's natural to get attached to your product or services, but success hinges on seeing its value through the customer's eye. So I just chose that to kind of echo, to try to very, very neutrally assess your market. Because sometimes I think folks find out that their market isn't exactly what they thought it was. Now, when you have your handout, this is an example of a couple of the questions that are on the handout. So you will be asked to, who is your target audience for your products? Just humor us in this and grab a pen when you have this and go ahead and write it down, because it might be something where you write it down, put it in a file, put it in your business file somewhere and pull that back out later on and see if it still holds true or if it's changed. Really think about the growing demand for the products that you either are currently selling or that you're considering scaling up to sell. And then think about the actual financial piece of setting aside that amount of revenue or income that you have to dedicate to specifically to a marketing strategy, and if you can do that. The second key consideration is to analyze your financial capacity to grow. So does your business have sufficient working capital at this point? You can kind of determine this from looking at your liabilities and your assets and come up with what your current ratio is. A lot of times you can think of the current ratio as it's your worst case plan. So it would be your ability, worst case scenario, if you had to liquidate, if you have enough assets, current assets on hand to cover your current liabilities. So ideally, the farm wants to have at least $2 or more of cash on hand, inventory to sell, accounts receivables, or prepaid liabilities that they can access for every dollar of debt that is owed. So think of the debt could be taxes, supplies, wages, things like that. So a current ratio that's greater than about 1.5, that company would have sufficient current assets to pay off its current liabilities. If it was equal to 1, so say this, instead of being 2 to 1, it was $2 or more of cash on hand against a $2 of debt owed, that would make you have a current ratio of 1. The company would have sufficient current assets, but it would have zero cushion. So you would have no margin of error in there, no wiggle room. And if it's less than 1, then the company is likely to have less, the company would have insufficient current assets to pay off current liabilities should something come up. Just monitor your financial performance by working through these benchmark financials each year. Probably best time to do it would be after the season, around the time that you're working on your financials and your taxes. Put systems in so that you can track things well. I know it's hard to, return back to the office with receipts, keep the business receipts out of the personal receipts. But it's worth the effort in the end to have really great tracking and great records and great systems in place. If you can establish these key financial benchmarks, then you will have insights into your business they'll help you make very nimble decisions when you need to. Let's see. So here we talk about track expenses and revenues by enterprise, create a monthly cash flow statement, complete a year-end summary, and file your Schedule F. And then, don't try to do everything. Just pick 2 or 3 financial benchmarks and track them over time and be able to see the trends as things change. And some suggested benchmarks would be your net farm income, which will tell you the annual assessment of how much you've made for your time and effort that season. Your current ratio we already talked about. Asset turnover rate, that's how efficient your capital investments are, meaning how productive is your farm's capital. So say you invested in some sort of equipment or machinery, is it efficient and is it returning to your operation? And your net farm income ratio lets you compare profit to total income. So this is a snapshot from the Census of Ag that was completed in 2022, showing Missouri specialty crop averages per farm. And then you have a column for vegetable and melon farms, fruit and tree, nut farms, and greenhouse nursery and floriculture. So different sectors there. But first it shows the ag products sold and government payments. And it's just interesting to look at what, for instance, a nut farm, fruit and tree is sitting at 33,000 and versus the greenhouse nursery and floriculture at 178,000. So the percent of farms with net gain in farm income, it looks like vegetable and melon farms was 63% and fruit and tree nut farms was 51%. So not that much difference, but way less general revenue generated from that business. And then the average value of land and buildings across the industry, really in the whole scope of things, pretty similar. And the next slide also, same thing, same categories, only it's looking at net cash farm income. So your vegetable and melon farms, their net income, 45,000 versus fruit and tree and nut farm, 6,000 versus your greenhouse, nursery, and floriculture, almost 58,000. With an asset turnover ratio, that greenhouse, nursery, and floriculture is the highest at 40.2%. And then you look through the farming, that very bottom one, farming is our primary occupation. Most of those fruit and tree and nut farmers must be doing something else off farm, because only 27% had that as a primary occupation. So that's just interesting. On your handout at this point, you would have a couple of quick questions from this area. Basically, I think we ask you to find your current assets, find your current liabilities, record those, calculate that current ratio, just go through the exercise of it. And then if it's not where you want it to be, try to adjust your capital and see what you need to do to get it there. And then pick 2 or 3 of the benchmarks, and those are listed out on the form to help you remember with the math, with the equation, to be able to do that. And then also there's a link to Cornell. They have a great financial scorecard that you can fill out. I think we'll post that in the chat if we haven't already, but you can fill that out with your numbers and it will do the calculations for you. So it's very handy. Just again, emphasizing taking time to record your expenses and revenues by your enterprise or by your product so that you can differentiate between those different products and what they're doing. Create that monthly cash flow statement and do your year-end summary and file your Schedule F. And last but not least, if you do find that you need more capital, and it's also often necessary for growth, think about things such as scaling back on those less profitable areas, delay capital investments, or entering into some sort of a value-added production. It's also important to manage your debt service effectively, ensuring it remains a manageable percentage of your gross revenue and you maintain a good relationship with your lender. So ways to access more capital, again, scale back on enterprises that are not profitable, delay those capital investments, maybe think about leasing or rentals, or maybe you can find another farmer that you can collaborate with and you can share in the expense cost of something. Increase the use of existing capital investments, co-packing, leases, enter into a value-added production to boost per unit profit. Segment your products, entering into a new market. Price shop input from different suppliers and take out a loan or a line of credit. Make sure you pay attention to what your debt service is and that it is a manageable amount.
FSA is a great partner for farm businesses. They offer very competitive interest rates. They have a variety of programs. They also have requirements for these programs. And the number one step is really visiting that local county office and applying for a farm number. And as a reminder, you can get a farm number whether you own land or you're leasing it to cover indoor or undercover, high tunnel, or open field production. The agency is really working hard to serve producers across the rural urban spectrum and be more responsive to the creative ways that people are entering agriculture.
So if you are considering a startup or scaling, this is why staffing is very important. Is if you already have a business or if you are the business, can you handle increased demand? Can you handle it yourself, or can your team that you already have handle that increase? So you need to evaluate their workload and the capacity. How much can you grow with your existing team before you have to add another employee? So tracking your workload distribution means identify if any employees are overburdened or consistently working overtime. That might indicate that you're understaffed. KPIs are key performance indicators. Those are things where you're analyzing metrics such as how long does it take to get a job done? Are you missing deadlines? Revenue, that is, how much revenue per employee indicates that they are operating efficiently. basically that's saying maybe if you were picking apples, how many bushels of apples is it reasonable that they should be able to pick in a work shift? And then the third one is observe operational gaps. Look for any areas where work is delayed, quality is compromised, or customer satisfaction is declining. When I think about work being delayed, I think of a worker who cannot start working on their job because they're missing some sort of an input, some sort of a supply. Maybe you have someone there that's ready to drive a tractor, but you don't have the input that they're going to be using when they're driving that tractor. Things like that. So look for those types of areas that will help you indicate if you can handle that increased demand. Another thing would be look at the skills of your staff and the roles that they all play. So ensure that your team members' skills and roles match the business's current needs. So assess that skill alignment with your business. Identify any gaps. So figure out if you're missing some sort of expertise and it's actually affecting your productivity or your growth potential. If you find yourself saying, well, I would like to start doing this, but I don't have anybody that has that skill to be able to do that, to pick that up, then that would be a skill gap. And evaluate any cross-training opportunities. So maybe that skill gap can be resolved by taking a part-time employee, teaching training with a new skill, and then they can become a full-time employee possibly. Again, your handout will ask you a few key things to think about afterwards, where you'll see, do you have enough labor to operate and scale? Do they have the right skills? And do they have the right job descriptions? And the training is in place to help them continue to grow. Another thing that's important, if you do have employees, to have some sort of an annual review process. If nothing else, it creates a non-threatening specific date and time to meet with that individual or those members of your team, and just have it be an open conversation about things that are going well, things that aren't going well, and steps that could be taken to improve those. Now we're moving on to can you manage and gain operational efficiencies? So the question is, have you mapped and analyzed your workflows to identify bottlenecks? Are your current processes streamlined and efficient? Can they be improved with scale, or should you outsource something? So go in and look at your processes. Create detailed flowcharts would be one way to handle it, or step-by-step descriptions of key business processes to visualize at each stage. When you get a little more organized and you start having numerous employees, a lot of times what this looks like, documenting a process, almost becomes your employee handbook. So that's where you have some of your training and the handbook there that will detail to an employee. It's a guide that an employee can look at, if they're performing a certain job. Otherwise, it could be a SOP, a standard operating procedure for different workflows. And then identifying bottlenecks was mentioned as far as look for steps where work consistently slows down or errors frequently occur. Maybe think here, this could be maybe if you were packing an order, maybe you have a lot of rework because orders are incorrect or mispacked or misread or something's happening. So identify bottlenecks, and then last, eliminate redundancies. Find where you have somebody doing repetitive tasks or unnecessary steps that can be removed without impacting quality or outcomes. I know sometimes businesses have overkill on this. Maybe they have multiple people checking something before it can go out the door. So it slows things down. So think about that and get feedback. Maybe some of the ways to find this information would be to get feedback from your customers and your employees. So ask your employees if they can give you solutions or tell you where there's bottlenecks, or maybe they have come up with some ideas that might make things more efficient. It's important to listen. seek customer input, collect that feedback on things such as sales, service, or support, identify areas for improvement. And then benchmark against best practices. So there's lots of industry guidelines out there. So compare your processes with industry standards or competitors and try to identify areas where you're falling behind. And then technology, um, leverage it if you can. Leverage and install and use and take advantage of what you can afford for your business as you're either starting or scaling. But some things are just necessary, and so they have to be budgeted for. So, what current tools do you have? Do you have accounting software? Do you have inventory software? Things like that that you use, and if they're um, a situation where it's kind of siloed. So maybe you have some sort of a customer management software that you use, but it's not talking to your inventory. So it's really hard and you have to run multiple reports to find out what kind of sales orders or sales history you have with different customers. Might think about looking for software that talks to each other so that you don't have to use different tools. Automate repetitive tasks with technology. So look at things that might handle your scheduling for your staff or your billing, most importantly. A lot of times billing and invoicing is not very fun, but you can't get paid if you don't send out the invoice. So some sort of a good invoicing platform. And then something maybe that would help you monitor your key metrics. This makes me think a lot of times about your marketing budget that you might be doing on social media. A lot of those have great metrics built right into them, but you need to monitor those and make sure that you're making future decisions based on those. Some cloud-based solutions, adopt anything that you can that is affordable, and oftentimes a cloud-based solution is the more affordable route. I think that that's probably, well, I know that that's true now as far as, for instance, QuickBooks. I think everything QuickBooks is online now, but for a while when it was still desktop, that desktop version, eventually just the price became so high that the online version was really the only option. Um, Reduce hardware costs by using the cloud. And then also use technology for your employee training. Provide employees with training, videos, different software, testing on skills. They can access tutorials online. You don't have to buy a book or a manual. A lot of times YouTube videos are pretty legit nowadays. Or you could even use YouTube videos to create your own training resources and post those on a YouTube channel. And then encourage a tech champion. That would be kind of like a subject matter expert, because technology can be a barrier. So having some tech champion within your team that is the go-to person to help others is very appreciated by employees. So as far as this area, there are 2 questions. It's going to remind you to look at your current processes and evaluate, how streamlined and efficient they are. And then the second one, technology. It's all about technology. What technology do you have in place? What affordable versions of technology could you leverage to help with your efficiencies in your operations? And then the 5th area that we would like you to look at as a key consideration is areas of risk. So assessing key areas of risk is essential to safeguard your business. Considering production, marketing, financial, legal, and human resource risks is paramount to understanding what your vulnerabilities are, and it will help you develop strategies that where you can mitigate those and ensure that your business remains resilient. So with production risk, try new crops in small areas. Talk to other growers, collaborate. I think in the ag industry, it doesn't seem to be between between growers, farmers, it's not as competitive. I think generally the consensus is that everyone would like to help everyone and, bounce new ideas and experiences off of each other. Be sure you sign up for any crop insurance programs that you might qualify for and diversify your crop mix. To mitigate marketing risk and do that market research, reevaluate your prices, make sure you know what your break-even price is and that you are actually generating some income, and pencil out what it would actually cost you if you switched or entered into a new market. To mitigate your financial risk, start tracking 2 or 3 KPIs, key performance measures, explore different options, and try to increase your access to capital. Legal risk, stay networked, make sure you have liability insurance, and try to find a good ag backgrounded lawyer. And then human resource risk, build out your job descriptions, discuss session plans for your business. That would potentially be a resource risk, especially if it's a family type business. You want to make sure that if your children are in the business or interested, that everyone, it's treated like a business and everybody has very clear-cut roles and expectations of what their duties are and responsibilities to that business. So the areas of risk will be listed, all 5 of them, talking about different ways to mitigate those. And so